The practice of apartheid in Namibia under German rule was a grim chapter in the country's history. For nearly half a century, from 1884 to 1915, Namibia was a German colony known as German Southwest Africa. During this period, the German authorities implemented a system of racial segregation and oppression, similar to the later apartheid regime in South Africa. This cruel custom had devastating consequences for the indigenous people of Namibia, leading to widespread suffering and profound social, cultural, and economic inequalities. The roots of apartheid in Namibia can be traced back to the German colonial policies of the late 19th century. The German authorities, driven by a desire for territorial expansion and economic dominance, sought to assert control over the indigenous peoples of Namibia. They implemented laws and regulations that segregated and marginalized the native population, relegating them to second-class citizens in their own land. This laid the groundwork for the more formalized apartheid system that would come to fruition in the 20th century. Under German rule, the rights of the indigenous peoples were systematically stripped away. Land expropriation was one of the most egregious aspects of this policy. The German authorities seized vast tracts of traditional indigenous lands and redistributed them to German settlers, denying the native population access to the ancestral territories. This dispossession had severe consequences for the ability of the indigenous communities to sustain themselves, leading to widespread poverty and displacement. Another cruel aspect of apartheid in Namibia was the forced labor inflicted upon the indigenous population. The German authorities instituted a system known as the Native Labor Corps, wherein indigenous men and women were coerced into working on German-owned farms, mines, and infrastructure projects under exploitative conditions. Many were subjected to excessive hours, physical abuse, and inadequate living conditions, all while receiving meager wages, if any. This systematic exploitation robbed the indigenous people of their dignity and perpetuated a cycle of poverty. The education system under German rule further perpetuated the cruel customs of apartheid. Indigenous children were denied access to quality education, reflecting a deliberate strategy to keep them in a subordinate position. The few schools that were established for indigenous children provided substandard resources and curriculum, designed to maintain a social hierarchy that favored Germans. This denial of education robbed the indigenous population of opportunities for advancement and further entrenched the inequalities of the apartheid system. The resistance to apartheid in Namibia was met with brutal repression. The German colonial forces employed violence, imprisonment, and even death to quell any dissent among the indigenous population. Massacres, such as the infamous Herero and Nama genocide of 1904-1908, resulted in the deaths of tens of thousands of indigenous people. These acts of violence were intended to crush any resistance and maintain the oppressive system of apartheid. The legacy of our apartheid in Namibia under German rule continues to shape the country to this day. The profound social, cultural, and economic inequalities created during this period still persist in Namibian society. The scars of dispossession, exploitation, and violence are deeply etched within communities and the national psyche. Acknowledging this dark chapter in history is crucial for fostering healing and achieving justice for the indigenous peoples of Namibia.